Greetings, fellow book lovers, and welcome back to Colin's Corner. Okay guys, I think I'm done promising you that I'm going to come out with videos soon because I seem to be failing to uphold my end of the promise. But regardless of that, I wanted to give you guys a wrap up of what I have been reading over the past couple of months, so February and March. But before we get into this probably pretty long wrap up, we do have to go over the answer for the last video's Comedy with Colin segment where I asked you guys the joke. What do you call a beehive without an exit? The answer? Unbelievable. I know. I love that joke. I love bad dad jokes. Get used to it if you're here. So anyways, guys, just a little, again, life update on why I haven't been posting as much. I just haven't felt the creative energy to be creating content for the last probably month or so. And I've really been taking a step back from kind of all socials, Discord, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, whatever it is, and just really trying to recenter, refocus on school, refocus on my physical health, because that is just something that had fallen by the wayside. So I'm back to working out again, thanks to my wonderful wife for inspiring me to get back into working out about the end of January, so very recently, but I've noticed an immediate impact on my mental health, and I feel better. So I'm going to try to create content when it's manageable for me to do so, just to give you guys an update on why it's been so long. But I'm really, really excited to be back, and I have some amazing books to talk with you guys about today. So without anything further, let's get right into this. The first book that I finished is going to be the second Cradle book, called Soulsmith by Will White. Now, if you've been following my channel for a while, you know this about me and about this channel. I hardly ever bash or negatively talk about books. I would never do like a dedicated review to bash a book, or a review that for a book I didn't enjoy. But since this is a wrap up and I'm just kind of letting you guys know what I read and what I thought about things in a brief fashion, I will tell you I did not like this book at all. So I think the only reason I finished this book is because I was doing it on audio. I did not enjoy almost any aspect of this book, if I'm being honest. The character of Ethan was the only redeemable aspect of this entire book, for me personally. Now, the part of this book that rubbed me the wrong way the most is that it felt like I was reading an instruction manual for some type of like board game or video game, and it felt like White was literally like I was reading an instruction manual for the way a type of magic works in this world. And then in the instruction manual, it'll give you a for example, like in the game, of this happening. And then the next scene in the book would just be the for example of what he just word for word explained to me about how the mana, mantra, whatever it is, works. And I just could not stand it. It really rubbed me against the grain, and I don't know, I want to ask you guys, I know it's not fair to write off an entire genre based off of one author or one series. I, though, am starting to feel like progression fantasy might just not be my cup of tea, which is totally cool. I'm not bashing anybody that likes the series. There's tons of people that love Cradle. What I want to ask you guys is this. I'm not too dead set on like wanting to like progression fantasy. I would like to like it. Lit RPG, whatever it is, because there's a lot of fans of it, and I'd like to see if it is for me. So I want to know, do you guys think it's worth me continuing in the Cradle series, or maybe trying a different lit RPG or progression fantasy? I know that many fans of the Cradle series will admit that this second book is really rough and that the series picks up steam after this, But there's so many things that I want to read, and this is one of the books that I've disliked the strongest in a long time. And so I just want to know your guys' opinion. You guys that have been watching me for a while, that know me, that kind of have an idea for my tastes. Do you think if I continue with Cradle with the third or the fourth book, that it will become better, it will become something that I can appreciate and that I like? Or do you think it's cool to just throw in the white towel and admit that maybe this series, not this whole entire genre, but maybe this series just isn't for me? So let me know down in the comments what your guys' thoughts is on that. Next up, we have a book called May I Sit With You. This is a book on meditation. It says underneath, a simple approach to meditation. This is written by a man named Tom Catton, who is a recovering drug addict. And what this is, he's not any kind of professional or any type of spiritual guru. He's not, doesn't claim to be a devout follower of any religion. It's just one man's experience with his quest in spirituality and how meditation has affected his life and the practice of seeking spiritual guidance and practicing some type of spirituality over the course of over 40 years. Now, this is something that I haven't talked on the channel yet about, but I feel comfortable enough to reveal it to you guys that I'm actually in recovery myself. I'm in between 8 and 9 years, so I have 8 years clean right now. So in a lot of ways, this book spoke to me, resonated with me a lot, and kind of helped me in my quest to incorporate meditation into my life, which is something that I'm trying to do regularly just for my mental health and just out of curiosity, because it's something that I have not done over the course of my life. And so this book really, like I said, resonated with me, and a lot of the things that Tom Catton speaks about in this book, I don't think you definitely don't need to be a recovering addict to benefit from this book, is the point that I'm trying to make. If you're somebody that's interested in meditation, this is a very interesting book because it's not preachy at all. This is just literally a guy that's like, hey, these are some things that I've done. These are some things that I've learned. These are some things that I've incorporated into my life that work for me. So it's really just a lot of suggestions, which I found was a great way for me to feel comfortable experimenting with different things and not feel like I was going to get something wrong. Not that this is something that you can get wrong, but it was a very welcoming experience into meditation, which is something I'm still very, very new with. So if meditation is something that you're interested in, I picked this up on Amazon. I think it was like 15 bucks, called May I Sit With You. So that's the second book that I finished. Next up, we have In Cold Blood by Truman Capote, and this I read alongside Britain from Some Okie Dude, and I can see what enticed Capote to want to create a novelization of this event. Capote did such a great job of setting this whole scenario up and then just kind of taking us along for the ride. For those of you that don't know what In Cold Blood is about, it is a novelization of the murder of the Clutter family by two men named Richard Hickok and Perry Smith. And basically, it's considered a nonfiction book, and it was created by Capote doing extensive research and interviews of tons of people that were involved directly in this or affected by it tangentially in some way. And I cannot fully explain my emotions as I was reading about these men committing these absolutely this heinous act for seemingly no gain. It just seemed to me so absolutely inconceivable that people in the world exist that think the way that Richard Hickok and Perry Smith think. And for that reason, I think this book is worth reading. It's obviously been talked about for decades and is considered a classic. I think it's a very unique emotional reading experience. I have not had at least that I can remember, a book affect me or be able to elicit these specific emotions. It was very bleak, just a heads up, and there are some pretty graphic scenes and some trigger warning type of content that goes on. So if you are interested in reading this and that type of stuff can get to you, I would look up trigger warnings for this book. But man, I just, following along Perry and Dick, who he gets referred to quite frequently in this book, Richard Hickok, they're a very interesting duo of criminals, and they are takers and wreak havoc and leave absolute destruction and devastation wherever they touch ground. And it was a really sad read for the victims of the obviously the Clutter family that got murdered. Although that was even an interesting emotional experience because there were no survivors of this family. There were no, younger siblings or parents that lost parents that lost children. It was the whole family got murdered by these two men. So really, like, the tangential relationships within the community, the anxiety that these two men came through this town and caused by creating this act, it was just a very, very unique reading experience. And I personally really enjoyed Capote's writing style. The one thing I will note is that this man loves commas. There are commas everywhere. But whatever. With that being said, I thought his writing style worked really, really well for this book. And I think that if you haven't read In Cold Blood and you're okay with a bleak type of book with not a lot of positive that goes on in it, this is it's just a unique experience, and it's something that I'm glad I read. And I'm glad I read it alongside Britton, and we kind of got to discuss it. We were pretty neck and neck once we got a little ways into the book about where we were. So it was really interesting just reading scenes and then talking with him about it. And overall, I enjoyed my experience a lot, and I do recommend reading this if you haven't given it a shot yet. Next up, I finished the fourth and final book in the Rain Wilds Chronicles, called, of course, Blood of Dragons. Now, I don't want to say too much about this one because it is the fourth book in a tetralogy and the 13th book in a 16-book series, but I will say that I thought this was a pretty good overall ending to the Rain Wilds Chronicles. This series, sub-series, in general, the Rain Wilds Chronicles, did end up being my least favorite of the Realm of the Elderlings so far, but I want to make it a point to say that I ended up enjoying this series a lot more than I thought I was going to heading into it. And it took me until about maybe halfway through the second book to really become invested in the characters of this specific sub-series, but the plot of this sub-series hooked me from the beginning. I thought the plot was awesome, and I knew that what was going on, even though we weren't following a lot of the characters that I have known to grow and love over the course of the first part of the series that I've finished so far, I knew that the events of the plot and everything that was going on in this part of Robin Hobb's world was going to have massive implications for the rest of her world at large. So that part kept me kind of glued and interested in the beginning. And I grew to love a lot of these characters, even though not nearly as much as Live Ship or the books containing the Fitz cast of characters. But the plot was very engaging, and some amazing discoveries are made that are bound to have an effect, like I said, on the rest of this world that I love so much. And I can't wait to finally start the final trilogy. It's such a bittersweet feeling. I'm so excited to get back to Fitz and the Fool and the other cast surrounding them. But man, I can't imagine not reading The Realm of the Elderlings. In fact, when I finish it, I might just restart the series. I don't know, it's been with me for so long now, and I've been on this journey for so long with Ben from Books with Bengus Khan. It's just going to feel weird bringing this series to a close, but let's not get sad and sappy. Let's enjoy the series one book at a time And Ben and I are going to discuss this, but I don't think we're going to discuss it until after I think we're going to share our brief thoughts on this one after we finish the first book in the Fitz and the Fool trilogy. Next up, I don't have a physical copy of this one, but I read Trigger Warning by Neil Gaiman. This is a collection of short fiction and is only my second Neil Gaiman book. The first and only other Neil Gaiman book that I read was The Ocean at the End of the Lane. I've got to say, I am absolutely enamored with Neil Gaiman's writing and his narration of his own work. Trigger Warnings I did strictly on audio, and it was narrated by Neil Gaiman himself. He is unbelievable as an audiobook narrator and unbelievable as an author. I once heard something that I'm sure many of you have heard before. I can't remember who the quote is from, but it went something along the lines of, there are writers that make you want to read, and there are writers that make you want to write. I've only read 2 Neil Gaiman books, but I can say that Neil Gaiman, more than any other author, has made me want to become a writer, just because of what he's able to do, the atmospheres that he's able to create, the emotions that he's able to just generate within me, and the intrigue and the mystery and just the wonder of his imagination. It really makes me want to, and not that I want to emulate Neil Gaiman or anything, but man, how cool is it to be able to do that and be so talented at it. I thought that Trigger Warnings was a fantastic way for me personally, as a really new Neil Gaiman reader, to get a lot of different tastes of the different types of story that he writes, different stories that he writes. And I don't know, I think that I own American Gods physically. It's the only other Neil Gaiman book that I own. But part of me really wants to, I can access a ton of his stuff that he narrates himself, of his own work. And I just really enjoyed my audiobook listening experience so much that I would love to listen to more of him narrating his own stories. So I do have American Gods, which I plan on reading relatively soon. But if you guys have any other Neil Gaiman suggestions that you think I need to put at the top of my list, because I really don't know even what his top books are besides American Gods, please let me know in the comments, because I really want to dig deeper into Neil Gaiman, because I think I might have discovered what could become another one of my favorite authors. And I'm really excited about that. A few of my favorite stories from this specific collection and Trigger Warnings was The Thing About Cassandra, The Case of Death and Honey, Click Clack, The Rattlebag, The Sleeper, and The Spindle. Those are just to name a few. But like I said, what I want to hear from you guys is what some of your favorite Neil Gaiman books are. If you know some that he narrates fantastically of his own work, let me know about the audiobook specific ones. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of Neil Gaiman, and I am so happy that I finally am getting to dig deeper into his back catalog. Next up, guys, we have, boom, Billy Summers by Stephen King. Now, this is a book that I read, a lot of you know. I'm kind of doing like a constant read-along, constant read-along with my sister, where we are just slowly working our way through some Stephen King books. She is a relatively new fan, and I'm kind of letting her, for the most part, be in the driver's seat. She's thrifting for Stephen King books and picking up ones that she can find, and that's kind of directing our reading journey. But we both finished Billy Summers, and I loved this book. I ended up enjoying Billy Summers far more than I originally thought that I was going to. And I think that, so Billy Summers is, for those of you that don't know, more or less about a hitman with a sense of morality. He will only take on jobs and contracts that he believes the victim will deserve to die. And Billy is a highly trained ex-military, ex-Marine sniper, and is incredibly intelligent. He gets hired to take out somebody and has to spend potentially up to 6 months in a little town called Midwood under the false identity of a writer. So again, it's Stephen King writing about a writer. I was extremely invested in this plot, and there was a lot of tension and a lot of like weird downtime tension where it was just kind of Billy doing things around town and like kind of getting to become a familiar face so that people didn't think he was a strange guy, so that when this thing went down, it was this whole thing, and he had to basically spend time building a life in this little town of Midwood, the small town America town. And I was invested, man. Again, Stephen King nails just the getting to know the small town people, the atmosphere of the town, the energy in the town, and Billy having to, you know, kind of walk on ice a little bit while he's trying to figure all this stuff out. And I thought it was absolutely fantastic. There was a lot of tension throughout this book. And I thought Billy himself was a great character. And there were some other awesome side characters in the story as well. But this book ultimately did not go at all where I thought it was going to go. And I loved where it went. And for the record, I think that this is one of King's better endings, especially of his more recent works. So if you haven't read Billy Summers yet and you're a big Stephen King fan, I highly recommend giving this one a shot. I don't think it cracked my top 10, but it's close. It's up there. I really, really did enjoy this book, and there were some awesome nods in this book to my favorite of all time Stephen King book, which is The Shining. So that definitely earned it some brownie points as well. Next up, guys, we have The Prophet of Eden. This is, of course, by friend and fellow booktuber Philip Chase. This is the second book in his Eden trilogy. I thought it was great. Bledla and the Priests of the Way are some truly evil and scary villains, and this holy war that is just ravaging Eormenland is at its absolute boiling point in this book. I find Chase's portrayal of some of my favorite familiar fantasy creatures to be fresh and to work really well. He's got elves, dwarves, magic wielders, and even dragons, and they all feel unique to Philip Chase, but not in a way that's trying to reinvent the wheel, which I think is really hard to do, and I think that Philip did a great job of freshening up these classic tropes and characters that we as fantasy readers come to know and of course love, but can really appreciate when somebody puts their own spin on it and makes it their own. And I think that Philip nails that in the second book. And again, where we leave off in The Prophet of Eden, I cannot wait to pick up The Return to Eden. I've heard fantastic things about the way that this trilogy finishes up, and so far book 1 and book 2 have been a hit for me, so I am extremely excited to finally finish this journey in Philip's world. Last but not least, guys, at all, for books that I finished recently, The Blade itself. Finally, I have finally gotten in to Joe Abercrombie's work, and guys, I'm just kidding. I loved it. I thought it was so awesome. I cannot believe that these books sat on my shelf for over 2 years, and I have known about them for longer than that. This book, this is going to sound weird, and I'm going to try to explain it, and it's probably not going to make any sense, because it doesn't really make sense to my head anyways. This book in this series and this author fell into this weird category that I have. I'm not sure if you guys have this category or not, or if it's just me not making any sense, but I have this category of books that I put off because I know I think I'm going to love it, and so I'm not really worried about finding out if I'm going to love it, and I kind of just wait till I'm in a mental space where I can just give all my attention and all my time into that book and just like live in that world. And so The First Law has fallen into that category, and I'm really glad that I waited in a way, but I'm also like kind of kicking myself in a way because, man, this was so good. I did the entire thing on audio. as was recommended to me by a ton of people, because they said that Stephen Pacey was fantastic, and he was so good. I don't know how he has the talent to just create such unique feeling voices for all of these characters and really, really bring them all, each individually, to life in my head. And I'm glad, I really am glad that I did this on audio. But part of me is kind of bummed that I'm not reading it physically, and I'm probably going to go back and read this physically someday too, because I'm really enjoying and clicking with Joe Abercrombie's writing style. His humor is right up my alley. His cadence is fantastic. I am just hooked to this. I'm not even listening to it very sped up. I think I'm listening to it on like 1.2 times speed, just because I'm really enjoying just experiencing Abercrombie's style. And my favorite character so far is Glockta. I don't think that that's a unique pick at all. But there's so many good characters just in this first book, and I feel like a lot of people like said there's not a lot that happens in the first book. I was totally cool with it. I felt very connected to these characters. I was literally laughing out loud at work when I was listening to this, and people were like, "What are you listening to?" And I'm like, "An audiobook. It's so good." Telling people about Joe Abercrombie before I've even finished the first book in his first trilogy. So it's safe to say that I am definitely a fan of Joe Abercrombie and cannot wait to get further into this series and to his world. As for what I'm currently reading, I will go over it very briefly because I know that this has already been a really long video, and I will start off with Dune. I'm about 60% of the way through Dune. This is my first time reading it, and I am absolutely loving it. I think it's fantastic. The desert setting is really working for me. I love the political uncertainty and just figuring out the lay of the political landscape alongside the Atreides family in this new, just completely new world that they're in. There's so many memorable characters already, like Paul, of course, Lady Jessica, Thufir Hawat, Leet Kynes, and so many more. But those are a few of my favorites so far. I am so excited and nervous to see where the back half of this book is going to go, because I'm not even familiar with the story of Dune at like a pop culture level. So this is all a pretty fairly new experience for me, and it's one that I've been putting off for far too long. I'm not even sure why for this, but I have a buddy that's not on BookTube, IRL friend, as they say, and I lent this book to him because he wanted to read it and he knew I had it, and he's the one that really sparked me to jump to this. He loved it and really kind of propelled me to want to dive into this one sooner than I was probably going to, so I have him to thank for that. And I cannot wait to finish this one and let you guys know my final thoughts when I get to the end. Next, I am not a patient person, so I am pretty well into Before They Are Hanged. And spoiler alert, I'm liking it even more than the first book. I think I'm 2/3 of the way through this one already. And again, I'm doing these ones strictly on audio. But man, again, just the different bands of characters that I'm following, and the magic of this world slowly unfolding, and how it works, and what types of creatures and villains are in this world. I'm still learning so much about Joe Abercrombie's world, and I am loving every minute of it. And again, so I think I'm getting to know the characters better to this point, where I'm noticing even more of Abercrombie's genius humor in his books, and really settling in to his writing style, and picking up on more things that I wasn't picking up early on in the first book that I was listening to. And so, again, I think that comes just with becoming more familiar with an author's style and what they do. But again, flying through this, probably going to fly through the third book too. And I am so happy that I finally started Joe Abercrombie. Last but not least, guys, my sister and I, after Billy Summers, decided to start. I don't know if that'll even focus. Let's see. 4 Past Midnight, a novella collection by Stephen King. We are taking our time with this one. We're taking our time through all of them. But this one starts with the Langoliers. And so, I don't know, Stephen King is like the only person in the world that can get away with listing a 240-page novel as a novella. It's got to be like the longest novella of all time. So it starts off with a long one. I'm only 30 or 40 pages in so far, but so far the setup I think is great. I'm invested in the story. I'm taking my time with it. I'm enjoying it. I think my sister's enjoying it so far too. So if you guys have read this one, I want to know what your favorite story out of 4 Past Midnight is. Leave it down in the comments below. Anyways, guys, that should get you just about caught up with everything that I have been reading over the last couple of months and what I'm working on right now. And I will refrain from promising you guys when I will be releasing another video, just because, you know, I've kind of decided to stop putting this self-imposed pressure on myself to get a review out or get a video out at a certain timeline, or it's just, I'm going to do it when I feel the creative energy to do it. And I feel like that's when I put my best quality content out and when I feel the best to record, where I'm not pressuring myself to do something that, you know, obviously nobody really cares about except for me. But I do feel bad when it's been over a month since I released a video, so I do apologize about that. And I really miss you guys when I take breaks that are even close to that long in the comment section. So I definitely am still going to try to be more regular than I have been. One thing I can say for sure is that this Saturday, that is April 13th, I will be having a discussion with Usman from Bards and Books, Caleb from Celebrity, and I think that might be it. Maybe Dan from Black and Blue Color Reader, about Memories of Ice, which we have all finished and loved and want to gush about and talk about with you all. So that will be a live discussion. This will be Saturday, I believe April 13th at 9 p.m. Eastern. That still might be up in the air, but be on the lookout for that because that will definitely be happening Saturday. The time, I'm not 100% sure yet, but definitely the 13th if we can all get together. Before I leave you guys, I of course have to do Comedy with Colin, and although it's a couple days late, I do have an eclipse joke for you guys. So today's joke is going to be, what does the moon do when he needs a haircut? If you think you know the answer, drop it down in the comments below. Guys, thank you so much for being patient with me when I give you updates and say that I'm a little burned out and can't be posting right now or just don't have the time or the energy to do it. You guys have given me so many words of love and support and are so kind to me, and I can't wait to talk to you guys about all of these books that I discussed today down in the comments. I hope you are all enjoying what you're currently reading, and remember, you're always welcome in Colin's Corner.